Hi again, everyone. Tony Winston here. Have written an arrangement, it's kind of a reharm on It Could Happen to You in our series that we're doing on this song, starting with most basic chords and then moving into more advanced topics. So I've written a little intro. I can't decide, do I want it like quarter notes and then this rhythm? Or the way I wrote it. That's what you have to do as a composer or an arranger, is make choices. I don't know. Okay, now, as you notice, I transposed the second half of the song up into the key of G flat. And this is very reminiscent of Bill Evans' version of The Days of Wine and Roses. Keith Jarrett also does the same kind of modulation in his version, which I'm going to get into a little bit later. I have kind of a rough printout of what he played, but that's going to be more advanced, so we'll save that for later. Talking a little bit about what I did. We've got E flat here, and this is kind of something like what Keith did. I think he kept going down, but I jumped up because I'm already pretty low on the piano. So, from the real chords, we do still have this, but it was a minor 7 flat 5 before. And minor 7 flat 5 chords can be turned into dominant chords. Why not? In fact, lots of times minor 7th chords, if you turn them into dominant 7ths, it just gives the song a little bit more edge to it and a little bit more forward momentum, because dominant chords want to keep moving somewhere else, whereas minor chords tend to just sit there. So you definitely wouldn't stop there on that dominant chord. And then I just could find no other way to harmonize that note. I could have just left it out and gone. And probably, when I would play this song, I use these arrangements just as guideposts. I tend to just play them a little bit more freely and not necessarily get every note here. But I like this. And then, all right, so following the chords, but the G minor is just a diatonic passing chord. Same kind of reharm there. And I do notice that Keith does these suspended chords with a flat 9 sometimes. And sometimes just pure suspended chords. Puts them in odd places. One thing I'm always thinking of is if you want to use the tritone substitution like you want to change like to an A7th to get to the A flat. But the melody is a bit harsh there on the flat 9. For some reason, if you go down a whole step more and get the sharp 9 and then come up to the A flat, it seems to, be a reasonable way of reharmonizing that. Yeah, and there's just a spot where you expect the G minor 7th, you're okay with the G 7th, but a G 11th, and that's the same as a sus 4, G7 sus 4. Sometimes I write it one way, sometimes I write it another way. G11, just a suspended chord. And then we kind of make it very altered there. Altered because it has a flat 9 and a flat 13. Altered tensions. Another 11th chord. Okay, I'm not crazy about that, but I like to use these random minor 7th chords because for some reason when you do like minor 7 or minor 11th chords and move them around in minor thirds, it just sounds kind of cool. So can't explain to you why it works, or it's the harmonic basis for it, but I've just noticed that before. So I move from F to D minor. And there I once again use that same reharm to get up to the E flat. And I'll tell you the truth, I'm kind of getting sick of it in this arrangement, so I should change it maybe to something like, why not give it a nice, I think I'll change that right now, B flat 7th, because what I got coming up is so weird, and I got it from Jeremy Siskind, and so it's got to be good, right? But he plays, now, a lot of times we play like a G, an E flat major 7th like this. All right? It's kind of like, it's like a G over an E flat. Because it resolves very nicely, and it gives a kind of a haunting feeling. But he takes it one step further. He plays, all right, which is, it's horrible sounding, but when he played it, it sounded pretty good, so I'm giving it a shot. So see, it resolves a little bit, and there's that chord we were talking about previously, the G over the, so he's got E minor over E flat, and then G over E flat, keeps it going right down to D minor 7th. I should make it thicker, I think. And if I was just playing it, I might go something like, give it a little something like that. Oh, and then go to a dominant chord, so. Now, the G minor, according to Barry Harris, would be kind of wrong because you shouldn't put the A in there. But we're kind of moving to a new key, and we want it to get a little strange anyway, so what the heck. And it's a common sound these days, too, so you just got to go with it. And once again, a sus chord with a flat 9. All right. So in the original chord, it goes like up to a minor 7 flat 5 in there, but you're basically getting from here right, you're getting, want to go to there, so you can do it with a cycle of fifths like that, or you can just go chromatically, because that is dominant motion. If you have motion. Okay. All right, let's get on with it. Now, before I walked up like that, but now I'm going to go down. Sometimes I couldn't write the complete chord symbol in, so that's a C minor 7 flat 5 over F. We should tie that low note too. And here, it's really C, like D flat minor 7th. And you could play the C sharp, or rather, you could play the D flat for the bass note and go. All right, now originally it's G flat major 7th to C flat major 7th. Just think like G to C, all right, G flat to C flat. So, that's original. But if you're going to this 4 chord here, why not make it like a 2-5-1? So go 2-5-1. All right, this is a pretty common reharm trick. So here we go. once again, we got that sus chord. And you would typically resolve it like that, but I resolved it to the tritone substitution. Clever. All right, now here in the last two lines, I did something that really it sounds wrong to me, and I'm maybe going to take one of them out or both of them out, but sometimes I just like to go down with minor chords down a perfect fourth. All right, that's the opposite of the cycle of fifths. It has some kind of negative harmony kind of association. It's a nice progression. So I like it, but I don't think it really fits in this song. So I'm making it thicker to try to help it out a little bit. I always like these kind of things that move, counter to each other. So I've got like, all right. And really, the hands are just changing jobs here. So you could say it's the same chord, E9, but then I took these two notes, moved them down there, these two and put them up here. So I'm not going to bother to name that chord, just thinking of it as an E7 chord. And the first one I made suspended. Kind of like the mu chord, but the mu chord has the 3 on the bass, but I'm getting that same tone or timbre or something. You could think of that as an A flat chord as well. Okay. Classic case where something very dissonant could work. Got that going on, but we move through that. You move through the darkness to the light. And so what I typically do will play through a progression like this several times, after I've written it, to kind of, just get the sound of it and the reharm kind of in my head. And then I'll just play around on it, and I might not hit every chord. I don't expect all of you to just be able to do that. I've got tons of experience. I've been doing this a long time, so a lot of this stuff is pretty familiar to me. But I can remember when it wasn't. And, I would spend a lot of time just working on, maybe a little section that gave me problems harmonically, trying to figure out how to improvise over, a couple of little chords that are in the piece. Most of it should be pretty easy. So as always, the sheet music is down there in the description. I may make a few changes before I put it down there, but it's yours for just showing up and watching my video, and I appreciate it. I'm going to be in Portugal for a little while, but I will be back to do more videos sometime in late June or July. Anyway, I appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and I also appreciate the folks that support me over there on Patreon. And sometimes, people just want to make a little donation or a tip or something, and they do it through Venmo or PayPal. I appreciate the support when I get it, but it gives me a lot of enjoyment just hearing from you. Oh yeah, leave a comment. I always read them all and try to respond to as many as I can. Okay, thanks everyone, and I'll see you again soon.